And welcome back. We're talking to Dr. Gilman Whiting and Dr. Donna Ford, both at Vanderbilt University. The topic is the disparity of African American and Hispanic students in gifted programs. And before we took a break, well, you kind of touched on, what schools need to do, what teachers need to do. But I noticed that there is a district in Florida, Broward County, I think it is, that sort of noticed that they had an issue with the number of students in the gifted programs, particularly since they had high numbers of both Hispanic and black students in that county. And so they did something a little bit differently. They changed the process in which they allow the testing process, it looks like, is what they did. Before it was teacher selection, maybe a parent, appeal to get your kid in a gifted class, and now they're actually doing something a little bit differently. I know you all both know about this. Talk a little bit about that. And is that the right thing to do for all school systems to do?
I think we should have been doing a universal screening from the beginning. We are in a test-driven society, right? We have the AYP. We had the No Child Left Behind. We're testing kids until they can't do anything but test. In Texas, they're taking out tests. In Georgia, they're taking out everything except the tests that are actually being measured. So we're already universally screening. Why don't we do that? The answer in the why is what results is from that. Up in Minnesota, for example, there's a superintendent there who said that you cannot expel or suspend a child unless she actually gets involved in it. The whole community went up in arms because they wanted to be able to just kick. And what she was noticing was all the black males were being kicked out of school. This is the reverse of that. I actually went to school in Broward County as a child, Southern Florida, and of course I wasn't gifted, but I'm still here. Anyway, the point being is that the universal screening should have been something that we could. If somebody is gifted, it will catch. It will catch people. But we might start discussing cost and taking out the teacher's authority. And well, if there's somebody we missed, you can still recommend them if you think they belong there. So I think it's a good...
And the way this works is all of the students are getting this test, right? It's not a pick this one, this one, this one, this one. You take the test and see if you pass.
Well, I want to be clear about something, though. The universal screening I support, but it's not a panacea. It's not going to solve everything. Because when you test, as we talked about earlier, matters. The time of year, so when I say when, second grade, third grade, whatever, the time of year, is it right after summer? Is it in the spring? Is it, when during the year do you test? How often are you going to do universal screening? What measure are you going to use? And then what cutoff scores are you going to use? So you can have a wonderful policy, universal screening, but you can sabotage the positive outcome, the effect by having policies and procedures around universal screening that are just counterproductive and put us in the same place that we're in. But on principle, the universal screening
it's a start.
It's a start, and it decreases significantly the subjectivity of teachers referring or not referring certain students. And that's really important because, again, in our work, we believe that the #1 reason for lack of access is teacher. And when we say teacher, we're talking about teacher, counselors, administrators, principals, educators. Their subjectivity and how it's having an impact on our not having even access to be assessed. And the other thing is, you will often hear about using local norms to identify. In the last 2 or 3 years, we have advocated for something that we think is even more impactful, and that's having school building norms. So, for example, if Metro identifies, if they identify 10% of all students in Metro as gifted, then we believe that 10% that each building needs to identify 10% of its children. So you
say
go
that again.
To,
so if the entire school system says we have about 10% of our students in the school system are gifted, then that you should have 10% per school
in
as well.
every building.
Okay.
So that means 10%. And I don't, want to name schools, but in the lowest performing school, 10% in the highest performing school. Then
that should be the goal.
That should be the goal.
Not necessarily what you might find.
No,
correct?
you don't find that. But if schools do that,
what she's saying
we
is
will
that
not have underrepresentation.
What she's
to the
saying
magnitude.
ultimately is that every school, whether or not they have programs or not.
Yes.
And here's another to add on to that. Like I said, universal screening is, I don't know why we're not doing it anyway, but we actually look at it, because the only way we're going to assess whether or not we have the right measures, we have the right cutoff scores, we're doing it right. I believe they're doing it at the 2nd grade anyway down in Broward County. But if all those things are in place, is to have something, a baseline. And without a baseline, we can keep talking about what we're going to do, but not do it.
Right.
And then we have to say, does this school actually offer the program to begin with? And that's where we began on our last segment, where we have a disproportionate number of low-income schools who don't have program. They become testing places and holding patterns. You know, one of my pet peeves is deal with the prison pipeline issue. And many of our kids, we were talking just a couple of years ago through SHOT Foundation work, where we have 50% or less, and sometimes down to under 20% of black males who never get a high school diploma. Now, in this day and age, what are you going to do?
From the school to the jail.
That's what's left, ultimately. So the gifted in those programs, if it's a way to keep kids in school longer, to give them a better chance to matriculate, I think ultimately that's something else. And I would say, go look in some of those special education classrooms. I guarantee you, some of those kids, their attitudes, behaviors that we call behavioral issues, are actually them being bored in classes.
Manifestations of giftedness and being bored. In every zip code, in every school building, there are gifted children.
Well, and one of the things that I want to get to, because we've got about 3 minutes left, I think, and I think you touched on it, and I know for sure you touched on it, but there are other things that you can do with your kids to push them and get their mind really going. So say you missed out on that opportunity to test into the gifted program in 2nd grade, but there are summer programs that are available that will motivate your children, things that Vanderbilt you all talked about. There are ways that as a parent, even though if my kid didn't test into gifted back in elementary school, that I can say I think they can take an honors class in high school, and you just have to fight and push for that. Talk about some of those other options for parents.
So I want parents to be aware of the National Association for Gifted Children, NAGC. Get on their website, lots of resources. Overall definitions, policy statements, position papers, summer reading lists, activities and programs, even at the annual conference, which is usually in November of every year. Get on Tennessee's Association for Gifted. I was looking at it a couple of days ago when I knew that we were going to have this conversation, and they have some really great resources, for even a section just for families on there. Again, the same kinds of things that you'd find on NAGC's website. You know, learn about critical thinking and problem solving. So read, you know, find articles and programs, you know, for that. There's a wonderful website on, I think it's called criticalthinking.com. Get on that website. There are worksheets, there are activities, you know, for you to promote critical thinking in your child and problem solving. Look up Bloom's taxonomy, B-L-O-O-M, apostrophe S, taxonomy. Look up Socratic questioning. Learn how to ask open-ended questions, not closed-ended questions. Learn how to ask these grand questions, these big questions that, you know, cause you to think. I subscribe to, I think it's called wordoftheday.com. Every day the new word comes to me. Get on the SAT's website. And that's free to do that. And that's free. Get on ACT's website, and they have word of the day, math problem of the day. The number one way to increase your IQ, your intelligence score, is your vocabulary. So learn how to talk to your children, expect them to answer in complete sentences, always ask them to give more than one reason for something. They said vocabulary will increase your child's IQ scores, will increase their test scores. Also, and by the way, it'll make teachers and others think you're intelligent.
Can you do it in 30 seconds?
Yes. Also, we have the Achievement Gap Institute, which we run at Vanderbilt for teachers and administrators. And also the Scholar Identity Institute for black males, and we're going to do something for the girls as well. So we actually do stuff here at home. And we actually approached the last superintendent several times. Matter of fact, last time I was on your show, went to the board. They said, yes, we're going to do it. And only one teacher showed up, and she paid for herself.
Dr. Gilman Whiting, Dr. Donna Ford, thank you so much for this interesting conversation. Certainly more stuff to do. We'll get some of those websites on our website so that you can get information and all that great stuff as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you.